So when we talk about maintaining a network, what do repeat users value? And so information, emotion, security, financial information, and actually the four fundamentals of trust, privacy, etc. Because without that, we don't have a network. And so what we're concerned about is how do customers perceive the value of our networks? And so how do we position? And positioning is in what place in the mind is your product occupying? For example, the Subaru car commercials. What have they picked in the automotive market? It's about love. It's about fuzzy feelings. It's about the dog and your best girl and all that kind of stuff. And so that's how they position themselves. How you associate with your product, and that has to do with branding, the need for it, what's the urgency of it. Dropbox is something you might use only 5 days a week because it's mostly work related. On the other hand, how urgent is it for you to use Snapchat? And the exchange is how well do they actually work? This is the perceived value relationship equation. Now, when you think number of users, you would think you have a very high perceived value, but there's also an issue of intimacy. And so when the number of users starts to get too high, so that actually has a threshold limit on that variable, then the value goes down because it's no longer special. Distance, influence, frequency, how unique is it? And that's it. If it's something that everybody else uses and it's not special, then what is it? It's a commodity. And so commodities are necessities, but not necessarily things that we value that much, like toilet paper. How relevant is it to you in value? How do we create these critical mass? And so it's through information, emotion, time, and economics. And so these are the types of techniques that we use to see how well we're doing with the perceived value. You can impact a network, and so through communication affects things like frequency, promotion, in fact, impacts how we value networks, how we set our segment sizes up, affects and can we leverage other networks? And so by bringing in other networks, like things that we don't have but somebody else has that you want, then all of a sudden that boosts up things like relevance and how we value it. Also influence. We need to make sure that the fundamentals are good, that we don't have holes present. We understand the critical path. And critical path is not what's hardest, and that's one of the big misconceptions people have. Critical path is what's the shortest path between 2 points. And is there equivalency? Meaning, is there more than one way to get there and to attack things? And that's why when systems fail, what do? They look for other pathways where we can get around the systems that have failed. And so examples, for example, a gatekeeper. And that's that if links are slow, how do I induce my customers to be more active? And so I have to set up events and promote things. What individuals should I target? And those are things like gatekeepers, liaisons. The other thing is I might want to keep somebody else out of my network. One thing that Facebook tries to do is by being your daily habit and taking up so much of your time, you only have so much time to spend on different things, and that's the way they try to get lockout. Good social networks are like good computer networks. In computer networks, you care about hop count, and that's that. What's the path length? How many nodes do I have to get through to get there? Minimizing the path, and how robust is it? Meaning, if it goes down, what are my options? And so this is why in a lot of networks you have redundancy. And so in designing a good network, it affects what kind of links that you want to create. So in terms of social network tracking, the output is dependent on topology, where's the concentration of activity, how dynamic is going on, how much of that is going to be predictable, what kind of relationship formations are happening, and how are they discovering different networks. So in terms of psychology, these items on the left are things that we're concerned about, and these are the challenges. You want usefulness, but at the same time you want security, and so examples of that are like dealing with holes, safety and affiliation, and that's I want to feel safe with it while I'm part of your group, and so this has to do with privacy versus intimacy. Propinquity is how attractive I am to something. How do I rank things? Is there an order to it? Meaning, is it like conjoint where I can pull values out, or is it just random what people want? And that's disjointed. And the problem with disjointed is that's very difficult to market to. Or are there cultural differences? And that goes into civility. So in terms of social networking applications, marketing strategies are based on perceived value and things like that. They try to find higher performance through analyzing networks. They look at data, and the key challenge is how do you cut out the noise? This is one tenet of data mining and collection that you should keep in mind, and that's that you don't know what data is going to be good. So get as much as you can and keep it, and then you filter out the noise. But in the early going, people start filtering out noises without even analyzing it, and you could be throwing away good data. How well can I manipulate the network? How responsive is it going to be to me? What are the limitations of my relationships? And how blindly will I follow things? And so that's the influencer effect. As somebody says something, lemmings off the cliff. Yeah, Dr. Cho's a weirdo because anytime somebody says something, I sit there and go, is what he's saying right? So in terms of the software today and what it does, it finds your customers, it determines the mix. What stimuli do you respond to? How quickly do you respond? Influencers and trends. You tag posts. The reason why you tag things is there are times, like for example, video is very difficult for software to identify. A lot of language is difficult to identify because every language has got its own idiosyncrasies. And, in English, we have sarcasm and things like that. So understanding and analyzing it, and so we can track growth and component. So what do I want out of a network? I need active nodes. I need people to be consistently active. I need growth. I need my network to expand, and I need to understand what are the nodes of interest. It's been shown over and over again, an active network is a profitable network. And so techniques you can use to get your network active are things like likes and shares and referrals. Quality are not random occurrences, understanding how everything links together. And I want that point to link to other points. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to create connection and growth, and that's why things like likes, also search steering and SEO is still effective. An example is the cult. And so for those of you who remember from TM400, Professor Chavez talked about this, and those are your early adopters. Those are your first customers. But when you look at your first customers, you should also be looking at them in a system type of way. And that's that. Why? Because if I understand the network they have, if they connect to another network, guess what? My spread now is a combination of their networks. And this is where I showed that diagram in video 1, I believe it was, where you see a big network and a big network, and it's only connected by a couple of points. Well, that could be your platform. What do they use this for? Outside of marketing, it's government terrorist tracking. They look at it for societal design, spread of disease to see what are the hot points, look at physical states, and of course predicting events. And so in terms of data limits, I talked about the 200 rule. The thing about causality, it's more art than science. This is why you need domain experts when you work on something, because one person can't understand it all. Everybody thinks, oh, I need a software or a math guy. No, you also need the person who understands the marketing or something like that. And this is where your TEM degree is so powerful. And so when you look at data, do you just see clouds or do you actually see animals in it? And so if we look at the nature of machines and the way they learn, it all first starts with the data. We don't know what's noisy and what's good or bad. Then from that data, what we're actually looking for are patterns, things that are repeatable. In my doctoral dissertation, I built a pressure sensor that covered 5 orders of magnitude. The typical pressure sensor only covers 3. And so the thing they pointed out, though, is my response was nonlinear. And they said, oh, that's a problem. And it's like, what problem is it? You don't care if it's linear or nonlinear. A computer can figure out the solutions to a polynomial, no problem. The thing I told them you're looking for is the level of repeatability, because we don't care if it's shaped like that, because I could just keep adding terms to a polynomial to solve it. What I'm really looking for is how repeatable those patterns are. And so based on that analysis, now I can come up with an algorithm. I can come up with rules that, based on these patterns, how should I respond? And from that, there's always new situations. And so I need feedback into that. I need constant improvement of these algorithms. And this is why Microsoft now, and I found this scary as hell, have code that will actually self-write its own code to feed back new information. I'm telling you, we're this close from Skynet. But what it comes down to is network theory plays a role in this entire value chain. So in conclusion, a node plus a conduit equals a network. That's what makes it up. In a network, my goal is that I want connections and growth. And so this is a function of velocity, inertial, and linking. And I need to go fix my animation on this. So in summary, the metrics related to these help us predict what kind of group we'll have, how it's going to grow. A lot of this is also related to cluster analysis, the groups that we can find. And so looking at these patterns and how people interact under different conditions, we can figure out people's habits. And so that's the importance of network theory.